Hello, everybody, and welcome to this The Legends podcast with me, Sarah Faruya. And today I'm really excited to be introducing to you a true legend in Tokyo. There must be very, very few people who live in Japan, certainly expats, who don't know this man. It is Baye McNeil. Hi, Baye.
Hello, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's really great to have you here. I'm so pleased you agreed to do this. Before we get into it, I just want to give a good introduction for Baye, because there's just so much to say about him, but I want to just read his introduction out for now. So Baye was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. He discovered his talent for writing in high school. He went on to university and then arrived in Japan, where he started his blog, Loco in Yokohama. That was made into a book, which is in the top 10 books by by an African American in 2012. In 2013, Bay released his second book, Loco in Yokohama, which is a collection of stories and anecdotes based on the goings on at two Yokohama public schools, which addressed a lot of really hot button issues at the time. In 2015, Baye began his work as an activist, and spearheading successful protests to prevent the airing of a blackface minstrel show on Japanese TV. And in 2017 to 18, a popular Japanese TV comedy show had a Japanese comedian impersonate Eddie Murphy in blackface, and Baye set off a global discussion and, more importantly, a national public discourse in Japan about the appropriateness of blackface. This continues to today. He has very recently, in the last year, been seen on the BBC talking about these kinds of things. In 2019, Baye's criticism of a major Japanese food company's whitewashing of tennis star Naomi Osaka, champion, also garnered global attention and firmly established Baye bona fide as a key influencer in the Japanese media as it pertains to the issues of race. In 2020, I'd like to add that Baye did an enormous amount of work around the Black Lives Matter movement. I actually don't know how you stayed above water. I've got goosebumps now and I feel quite emotional thinking about that, Baye, because you put so much work into that. It's unbelievable. And yeah, so we're going to talk now to Baye. He's an educator. He lectures at universities, including Waseda University in Tokyo. I used to lecture there too, on topics such as biracial experience in Japan and the problems associated with stereotyping and presumptions. He does so with the hope of raising awareness of issues critical to Japan's future, the country he has come to love and he calls home. So what an incredible introduction there. Writer, educator, so many things. So, well, author, columnist, and lecturer is what it says in his bio on his website. Please do go over there, bayemcneil.com. Really interesting stuff over there. So let's get into it, Baye. So we like to start at the beginning here. So tell me about your ancestry, your background, and your childhood.
My ancestry. Wow. Actually, I don't know much about it. I mean, I know I can go back 2 generations. Now, my mother, she's from Savannah, Georgia, as well as my grandmother from Savannah. On my father's side, my father's from Philadelphia, and his father was from Jamaica. And that's as far back as I go.
Yeah.
I don't really know any of the greats, great greats, none of that. I never met my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
They passed away before I was, cognizant of people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was. I'm really not really connected with my ancestry. What's the other question?
Childhood and your upbringing.
Well, I grew up. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York,
Mm-hmm.
and um, my mother, like I said, she's from Savannah, Georgia, but she moved to New York back in the early 60s, late
Mm-hmm.
50s, early 60s. And she got involved in activism, civil rights movement. And um, I think she was probably closer to the Malcolm X school than to the Martin Luther King
Hmm.
school of thought, but not that they're not that they were so distinct. But early on in their careers, their thinking was very, diverse, and both were, obviously both were assassinated. But after that, she got involved with the Pan African Black Power movement of the 70s,
Hmm.
and through a friend of hers. And she wasn't keen on having her children Europeanized in the public school system.
Hmm.
And that's certainly what American schools are prone to do. Um, so she, instead of placing me in a public school, she put me in a private school that focused on African thought, African culture, African history, African language. So instead of learning about Picasso and Michelangelo and Beethoven and all these famous, popular, incredible Europeans, we learned about Africans, the great Africans of our past, and you know, Michael, instead of Michelangelo, you have, artists like Basquiat and these type of people. African artists and musicians, Coltrane and Thelonious Monk and these type of people. Actually, they was Monk and them was still around. They used to come to the school and perform and stuff. I was really a part of an incredible scene. My mother she was way ahead of her time. And the name of the school was Uhuru Sasa Shule,
Hmm.
which is Swahili. We didn't learn French or Spanish. We learned Kiswahili, which is a language spoken in East Africa. And this is in Bedford Stuyvesant in Brooklyn. This isn't. This is what was going on in Brooklyn at that time. And in the school during the day, the building where the school was located. During the day, it was a school, and in the evening, it became a nightclub, and many jazz performers and musicians would come and perform. So after school, we take all the desks out of the classroom, replace it with these nightclub tables with candles and stuff, and the people would, yeah. This school was it was something special. It was really something special, and so anyway, that was the school I had gone to when I was a kid, and we were very it was fairly militant. A lot of teachers were Vietnam vets and Black Panthers and Black Muslims. A lot of these very progressive um, pro-black type of organizations were, a lot of the leadership, and a lot of them were educators who were disenchanted with the public school system and decided to start their own thing.
Hmm.
So I was there until high school. My first experience in public school was in high school, and that was quite a culture shock for me. It was the first time I had a non-black teacher. It was the first time expectations of me were so low. I was accustomed to them being extremely high.
Mm.
And when I got to public school, I was so far advanced ahead of the kids that were in public school, my peers, that I kind of slacked off. I was like, wow, I'm 2 years ahead of you guys. Are you learning geometry? Really? We learned that, So I was so advanced that I and I was so accustomed to kind of like heavy discipline. The school I went to was very disciplined. We were marching in the streets, with combat boots. This is the uniform, combat boots and dashikis and stuff. And then I go to public school, there's no uniform, and it's, you don't do your homework, no one cares. In my school, if I didn't do my homework, they was beating us. It was really it was a very entirely different environment there. So yeah, I became slack, but I still did pretty well. And then when I graduated from high school, I went to university in Brook. Well, actually, no. Right after high school, there was no one in my family really. My mother never went to university. My father, they were separated, so there was no one kind of pushing me towards going to university. But I kind of felt like this is something I really wanted to do. But I didn't have any money. We were very poor. So I joined the service, the Army Reserves, in order to get money for school, and And that was a, well, you know, I mean, I'm not sure if you read my book or not, the first book, but I kind of covered most of my background in that book.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But for our listeners, could you just give us a quick
but I joined the Army in 1984. This
yeah.
was peacetime, you know, comparatively. I
Yeah.
mean, America hasn't really had a peacetime since then.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since I think that was the first, I think, you know, well, we had little sporadic, you know, clashes with, you know, Haiti, and was something that happened in South America. I forgot which country it was. You know, they had little things back then, but it was nothing big. So yeah, I was in the Army in the peacetime. And as soon as things started getting heavy, that's when I got out. So yeah, I spent 8 years in the military, and this is in reserve. So while I was pulling my my weekend warrior military duty, I was also going to university in Brooklyn. I went to Long Island University, and I was studying media arts and communication. And it was there that I mean, I had written a couple of stories in high school that were, you know, applauded, but I didn't really think of myself as a writer then. But then I had written a few papers in the university, and there was a professor there, Professor Barbara Henning, who told me, "You're a writer. You're a natural. You ought to be thinking about doing this, in, you know, as a career." I was like, "Really?" You know, I didn't really believe her because I didn't really trust white people back then. But she recommended that I take up English as a major, and that I take this another writing course. And I did that at her recommendation. And that teacher also was like, "Wow, you are, you know, you have an extraordinary voice, and you need to, you know, refine it. And here's some books." He gave me some recommendations, some writers that he thought would inspire me, encourage me to keep going. He was so on point. It was writers like Dashiell Hammond, and who else was in there? Zora Neale Hurston and Toni Morrison, and people I heard of but I hadn't really read before. And once I read them, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, I want to do this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was because of these two professors that I really decided to become a writer, and both of them were white. So this kind of changed my impression, like what I was taught to believe about white people. I had to question that, you know, at this time in my life, and I did. And then after university, I started working in. Well, I guess that's enough of that.
Yeah, that's just, there's so much in here. I've already
Yeah.
got a page full of notes.
I'm like, wow, how much am I supposed to cover?
Oh
Really,
no, everything, because there's
everything, really.
no, anything you want to, anything that comes out of your mouth is
Oh,
absolutely
okay.
fine by it, because it's all your story, and it's all the way things are weaved together, and it's all the, like, this is absolutely fascinating. I had no idea about this school that you went to. I'm really interested in the influence of that, but
Hey, don't let me go off. Please stop.
No, I love
and ask
it.
questions.
Are you kidding me? Nobody needs to hear another thing from me. I listen to me every other week. So no, this is absolutely fascinating. So I want to rewind. Your mum sounds like like a stellar woman. What? Wow. I'm interested. So the first thing I'm interested in is just a very simple, straightforward question, which is this: the Malcolm X school or the Martin Luther King school? Can you just clarify that for me in the simplest terms possible? Like talking to a child.
And again, I'm referring to earlier in there thinking.
Yeah.
Because at this time, the time I'm talking about, where the distinction was crystal clear, was when Malcolm X was a member of the Black Muslims.
Right. Okay.
So at that time, the Malcolm X school of thought was passive resistance is tantamount to suicide. Right. You ask him, you pretty much giving them carte blanche to kill you. And his position was, if anyone hits you, hit them back harder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when someone sticks a dog on you, you kill the dog and kill the person who tried to kill you with the dog.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just sit around wait for people to sick dogs on you and think of that as resistance. So that was his school of thought. And a lot of people felt that way. It felt like, it's just too passive to let people, abuse you for the, and of course the Martin Luther King school of thought was, this in itself is an aggression because the key is to let the world see how animalistic and how deviant the forces against us are, and push forward with this Christian approach to it. So you're going to appeal to the Christians in the audience, which was, America's a fairly Christian country. You're going to appeal to the Christians. They're going to feel guilty watching Christians sick dogs on black Christians, and that's going to appeal to their sense of morality more so than their humanity. Obviously, humanity wasn't enough, so they need something else to kind of push them to the point where they're prepared to side with MLK against this kind of evil, against this kind of darkness. So that was his approach. So they had two distinct approaches, and also the Black Muslim approach was, there's never going to be any true integration in America. So let's just separate, have a Black America and a white America and see how it works out. So when slavery ended during the Reconstruction period, the former slaves were promised 40 acres and a mule. Give us our 40 acres and a mule now, each individual, and we'll have our own land and we can do our own thing and you can continue to do your thing. And we can just, do our thing separately. Of course, America wasn't going to have any of that. Those, they couldn't even do it back then.
Yeah, how's that working out?
Yeah, so that was
yeah,
not going to happen. So anyway, that was the two schools of thought.
Thank you. That's really way clearer. And the thing that really got me here is you have to appeal to the morality, not the humanity, because the humanity isn't. And where's the morality as well? I don't know. I have so many questions here, Baye, so I'm just going to throw that out.
Well, if humanity was a priority, if everyone being treated, if all Americans, all humans being treated humanely was a priority, we would have never had to go through the civil rights movement. Yeah. So obviously that wasn't a priority in America. So and I think that dates back to the original Constitution, because the Constitution kind of dehumanized people of African descent from the start, because in the Constitution, Black people were 5/8 human. I think that was the fraction that was used. Mm-hmm. But it's a fraction of full human, enfranchisement. So, and that just continued until Martin Luther King. So that continued until 1960s, this fraction of a human status. And I don't think any of these people that MLK was trying to appeal to were prepared to change that status until he appealed to their morality and their sense of, I don't know, I guess maybe shame as well, because the whole world is watching how horrible, how much tolerance America has for the kind of violence that was being done to Black people. And that's kind of embarrassing, maybe. I don't know. So it was a combination of feelings that he was tampering with that caused people to say, okay, it's time to make a change. And so I think it was a combination of MLK's way of going about things, and MLK and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X's that was that made all this happen. And both of them had, they both were valid, totally valid. So
yeah, really, it makes perfect sense. I mean, the way you've just put that together there in a nutshell, I'm sure is going to be really useful for the people who are listening to this, and certainly for me, to understand that particular snapshot of history, which of course continues to this day, and perhaps we can revisit that. I'm so interested in your mum. What a forward-thinking woman, and sending you to that school. I didn't even know schools like this were in play. Surprise, surprise. So do you think the impact of that was? I mean, you've half answered this. Like when you went to high school, you were like, oh, wow, now I'm undervalued, but also overachieving. I think, again, that just shines a spotlight on a lot of, an awful lot of things here, including the Constitution.
Yeah.
Um, and forgive me for being incredibly clumsy. I'm just going to ask the questions that I'm interested in.
No, go for it.
So what do you think was, so first of all, your mum, tell me more about your mum. So interested in the, in her.
Well, my mom, she's an artist.
Yeah. She's
Yeah,
still around.
yeah.
Shout out to
And
mama.
yeah, she's a collagist. Is that the word?
Yes, it is now.
Okay. She makes collages and really awesome stuff. She's also a master hair braider.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she had a hair braiding service, that was very popular back in the 80s and 70s with people that first came into vogue. I'm trying to remember. I think it was the 70s. Maybe there was a famous actress on Sesame Street who my mother actually did her hair and the cornrows, and everybody said, "Oh, I want to be her." And suddenly my mother had this booming business. But yeah, she was an extraordinary woman and a teacher and artist and hair. I don't know. I'm not sure. Beautifier. So yeah, she's great. And very forward thinking. Very forward thinking. I I have three older siblings, and they were in public school at the time. So it wasn't any guesswork involved. She could see the difference of what they were learning in public school and what they could be learning in this Pan-African school.
Yeah.
So she pulled them out of public school and put them into this school. So they had the experience of public school. I had never had the experience of public school. My first school was this school. So in that school, and they would not let you have a European name. So my family, we all changed our names, and that's how I got the name Baye. So the name Baye is actually a Senegalese name.
Say again.
Senegalese.
Senegalese. Okay.
Yeah. So So and everyone in my family has African names, including my mother, and because in this school they considered the European names as slave names.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you know the history of how African Americans got their names, but the vast majority got their names from their former slave masters. So McNeil was likely the people who owned my grandfather back in Jamaica. So, or his family, his fathers, so that's those names. And my first name as well. These are names that came from Europe, and whereas it's become commonplace for people of African descent to have these names. If you see, for example, a Chinese person with a name like Joe, you're gonna be like, really? But when you see a black guy with a name like Joe, you don't say really. But actually, it should be the same thing because we are not native to Europe. So why do we have these European names? So now I have an African name. This is the name I go by. So, and everyone in my family does as well. So this type of thing is key. I think it's critical to Black self-esteem.
Yeah.
And when you are told that everything wonderful in the world and in history comes from Europe or comes from whiteness, you tend to gravitate towards that, as the ambition, the aspiration,
Yeah.
And that's pretty much just the mentality of most of African America. This aspiration towards what has been presented by Europe as what you should be trying to attain, the American dream, and it's sad. It's sad because it creates us. We don't know who ourselves. We're still lost. We're still lost. We're still disconnected from our true selves. And hopefully at some point we'll find ourselves. I think what's going on now is putting us on the right path. The Black Lives Matters type of movement is putting us on the right path towards where, finding out what our true aspiration ought to be, because it isn't what it is right now. Right now it's it's kind of warped. And it's kind of difficult to figure out where we need to be going. But I think at some point we're going to figure it out. I hope I'm around when that happens.
Oh, it's me too. How interesting that your mum was able to divert you away from that and into, you, to use your words, towards Black self-esteem.
Yeah.
Like when you say she was forward thinking, I didn't really know what you meant there, but now I'm starting to put it together that she really knew how to divert you towards that. By the way, I'm from Liverpool, by the way, so you know this. As you're talking, I can put together the pieces of some pieces of this dreadful puzzle, actually. Yes, and I can remember being in a really awkward situation in Japan. Actually, I had a very enthusiastic boss, and she asked our African-American colleague, and there was a Scottish guy, and they have the same surname, and she was like, "Oh, maybe you're related." Yeah, like, and I was like, "Oh," but he just said straight away, "No, that's my slave name." And you know, which good for him, but also why though? But you know, it's just, you and I both know this is just part of so much stuff and a lot of naivety in Japan, which is, it's well intentioned, right? But at the same time, it's quite.
Well, it's not just Japan, America
no,
too.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, hello, I'm from England.
Yeah. It's a global naivete, and it's purposely done. You know, this was intentionally done. It wasn't an oversight. You know what I mean?
Say more. Say more.
Yeah. Say it again.
Say more.
Say more.
Yeah, like that. It's not.
Well, I'm saying that if you look at the reason my mother was also part of this for her ability to foresee things is that, and she didn't really have to use it too much because she had 3 children who were in the public school system, so she can see exactly what they were learning, and they were not learning this in the school. When they taught about slavery, they taught about it in a way that made it seem like, oh, this was just a bad time for Black people.
Whoops. Yeah.
Hey, you okay? I'm in an interview right now. Little thing. So it was where was I? I'm sorry.
I'm just giving a shout out to Mrs. Baye there.
Yeah.
Recently married, congratulations. Anyway, we were talking about yeah, it's quite a big question. And it was like,
it is a big question.
The deliberate, so it's almost like, if I'm hearing you right, it's almost like it was like, whoops, that happened, but it wasn't whoops, that happened. It was like, that happened for 400 years. Tell me where I'm wrong, and tell me what the deliberate kind of whatever happened. Denaming.
It's kind of like okay, I'm not, well, you say you're from Liverpool, so if you grew up in America, maybe some of this went overseas as well. You look at films about the American expansion from east to west, and you'll see these cowboy movies. And the cowboys are the heroes and the Indians are the villains, right? And this is the narrative that was taught in school, not just on TV, in school as well. So in the narrative in the films that you see about from that period, or from the pre-proclamation, Emancipation Proclamation period, you'll see, you know, happy slaves, like going with the wind, you know, so they look like they're just like, part of the family. And it just wasn't the case. But this was the narrative that was taught, you know, that this was just how it was in that time. This is how people of the time, you know, got around. This is how things went. But it was much deeper than that, you know. it was much deeper than that. And this just wasn't taught. You're not taught that Thomas Jefferson owned slaves and raped his slaves. You're just not taught that. You're not taught that George Washington and these people, they're heroes in American history. So if you go to American school, your heroes are going to be people who owned your people. So, and it's just never going to be presented to you in that way. But the school I went to, you better believe it was. So, and the fact that it was presented to me in that way, I had a much clearer understanding of what America really is, what it's really about. And I had a much healthier self-esteem as a result. So this is what I meant by
Beautiful. And you've almost answered my next question, which is like, what did you think was the impact? So you said you've got a much healthier self-esteem,
Oh, yeah.
very strong sense of self. How else do you think that like being straight into that kind of environment has, and how does it transfer into your, as you know, I'm actually answering my own question here, because I've often thought, how is Baye so able to just put himself, like, you are so very honest and straightforward about anything that's a hot button issue to do with race in Japan.
And I just often wish that I had your same bravery and skill. And I'm starting to put it together a little bit now, but I'd like to hear more from you, what that sense of self-esteem and that sense of narrative is so important. I don't know if you can catch the question from this, Baye. I feel like I'm having a moment, so I'm going to hand it over to you. I feel like something's just, another piece of the dreadful puzzle has just fallen into place, but it's a good piece.
Well, I think that it's not necessarily about having the answers, but it's about asking the right kinds of questions. And I think when I came here and I started blogging, I wasn't blogging to provide answers, but I was kind of giving people an idea of what kind of questions they should be asking, and that changed. And in that way, I changed the narrative, because now people were, they were questioning things that before they kind of took for granted, or they didn't think it was important to question, because they're so accustomed to, I don't know, when you have a healthy self-esteem and you see everyone as your equal, you approach the world differently. And I think that the majority of African Americans, particularly those who go to public school, they kind of indoctrinated into a world that tells them that they're less than, and whether they embrace that or not is case by case, but many do. They embrace this narrative that they are less than, and they have to, they're expected to, or it's the natural order that they have to work harder and suffer and, this type of thing. And I don't know, I never embraced that. Of course, it was presented to me, because even though I was going to this school, I still had to live in this world, watching Brady Bunch and Partridge Family and all this stuff. I still got that, so I can see what the rest of the world was, the narrative that the rest of the world was giving us, as well as the narrative that I was getting from the Pan-African Black Power movement. And I can see the conflict, even from 6 years old, 7 years old. I can see that there was a conflict in the information that I was getting from these various sources, whereas most people are only getting it from the one source. I was getting, this narrative that George Washington is a hero. George Washington is a villain. Thomas Jefferson is a hero. No. Thomas Jefferson is a villain. I was getting both.
Yeah.
And it kept me balanced. And I think that it prepared me for the kind of challenges that I'm facing now. This ability to remain balanced and capable of kind of seeing the world from this perspective and this perspective. I don't know. Does that help? Is that kind of?
It does. It really helps. It's so interesting to hear this. I mean, of course, my ears prick up when I hear the word self-esteem, and from the coaching perspective. But it just that sense of yourself, And that's, I love what you said here, like healthy self-esteem, and you feel equal to everybody else. You approach yourself and the world differently. And I really love that idea. And I think there's something really juicy underneath here for anybody who's listening. I remember my friend's mum, who is Japanese, used to say that Japan has this strange self-esteem problem as a country. This is how she described it, right? They used to live in America as well. She lived in America for ages and then came back to Japan. Whereas they're always pitching themselves as superior or inferior to other people. So you have, and when you're in that kind of balance, you always have to be like measuring where you are above or below people. And that can really impact your ability to have integrity, or to no disrespect to Japan, this is just me kind of working this out as I'm speaking, or to tell the truth, or to not hide parts of yourself. And I'm seeing that in you now. It's that sense of like, you don't have to kind of leverage yourself above or below people, because you have a healthy self-esteem. You see everybody as equal and you approach the world and yourself differently. Therefore, I can output all this very, very hot button topic stuff. I can call out the blackface on NHK or where, or whatever it is, or I can go to Nissin, this huge food conglomerate, and say, no, you don't get to make that cartoon, you know, and not be like filled with concern that you need to kowtow, or, you know, whatever that, does it make sense? I hope the people listening.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think that it began with this school and with my mother's insistence that this is how her children should be indoctrinated. And it's just a brilliant move on her part. Absolutely brilliant.
Genius move on her part. And
I'm not even sure if she saw this in the future.
No.
You know, I don't know if she saw, you know, the future ramifications of what she was doing at that time, but maybe she did. Maybe she did. We never really talked about it, but maybe she did.
Yeah, we didn't. Back then, we didn't really talk that much about things. Yeah, we had to wait for Oprah to come along to give us permission to all talk about things openly. But I think this is really important for anybody as well, is to have that sense of self and that sense of equity and equality from a really, and recognition and sense of self from an early age that is based in something beyond. And whatever your mum saw there, I think, and I could be wrong, but I think that a lot of us are now seeing now over this last year, that kind of peeling back of like, oh shit, it was much worse than we ever imagined, and has been all along.
Yeah.
You know, and wow, okay then.
Yeah, and I just had a preview of that. I think my school was like, they told me back then, it's much worse than you think.
And it has always been. It's inherent in the country itself. It's inherent in the very first constitution. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you should bring up the Constitution. I was talking to somebody else who really loves the Constitution, Terry McMillan.
Ooh, I know Terry.
Yeah, of course, you're both Brooklyn. Brooklyn guys, aren't you? Both creative. She's one of my favorite humans ever. We used to be in a women's organization together on the board of directors.
Wow.
A really good friend, and our conversation was fantastic. I just felt like I'd been to the pub or something. Anyway, and she also talked about the Constitution and how fascinated she is, because she got really involved in maybe the John Kerry campaign and then the Obama campaign. And she was talking about the Constitution, how fascinated she is by it. And yeah, so it just really links back to that. And I would encourage the listeners to go back and listen to that interview too, because these guys are from the same place, just I think maybe 10, 15, maybe 20 years apart. So let's move on. So I'm interested just to get back into your chronology.
Right.
So you graduated university. You wrote a novel before you came to Japan, is that right?
I did. I did. It was very autobiographical, as usual. The first novel usually is. And I was working at the time. I was working in corporate America as a sales executive at this company in Midtown Manhattan, and it was doing very well. But a friend of mine, this is funny. A friend of mine recommended a book. He said, read this book. So I read it. The name of the book was, you probably read it too, The Fountainhead.
No, I haven't.
Oh, I recommend.
Okay.
So anyway, it's a book by Ayn Rand. It's called The Fountainhead, and I read the book. And I don't know, occasionally you read a book and it's kind of a boat rocker, you know, it kind of, yeah. And that was a boat rocker for me. That's it. That made me question everything I was doing and why. And I've read it several times since then, but the first time it really,
Yeah.
the next thing I know, I was saving up money to leave that job. I was writing a book because I'm like, I decided I am not a salesperson. I am not a, this is not the lifestyle I want. I want to be a writer. So I started writing a book. Right after I finished reading that book, I started writing my novel. And saving up money and working towards this great big bonus. And what happened was I finished the book, and a friend of mine, he said, "Oh, they're having a writers conference at this university near my home in Brooklyn. We should go." And we went. There's a lot of serendipity here, so bear with me. So we went to this this conference, and there was one of the sessions was it was this Black Writers Conference. So some editors are talking about how complicated it is to get your book published, blah, 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 blah. And we listened to this editors roundtable kind of panel thing. And after the panel, we were invited to come up to the stage and give them our cards and talk about, your books or whatever. So I did that. And while I was down there, somebody out of the crowd randomly just walks up to me and says, "Oh, Marie Brown is here." I'm like, I didn't know who Marie Brown is. I'm like, "Sure," but I could tell from the tone of their voice there was somebody I should know. Yeah. So I'm like, "Really? Yeah, where?" He's like, "Oh, she's up there." I'm like, "Oh, wow." He's like, "You should go tell her about your book." I'm like, "Really? Okay." So I went up there. There's like a line to talk to her. Like about 4 or 5 people were waiting online. So I'm like, she must be somebody. I still don't know who she is. And then I woke up to him like, "Hi, Marie. My name is Baye, and I wrote this novel." She's like, "Oh." I told her a little bit about it. She said, "Sounds interesting." She gave me a card. She said, "Here's my email address. Send me the first 3 chapters. If I like it, I'll tell you to send me the rest." I said, "Okay." And then when I went home, this is pre-internet. Right? There's no real internet this time, so I can't really, Google her or anything like that. This is the 90s. Yeah. So, I did that. I sent her the first 3 chapters, but later on, I asked people around, friends of mine, "Do you know Marie Brown?" They're like, "That's Terry McMillan's agent." I'm like, "Huh? What?" So anyway, I sent her the first 3 chapters. She sent me another email. She said, "Oh, this is great. Send me the rest." So I sent her the rest. Next thing I know, I'm under contract with the same agent as Terry McMillan and a few other famous Black writers. So I was like, okay, I'm off to the races, right? I'm off to the races. And then I quit the job. I got the big bonus. I'm working from home. I'm a full-time writer. You couldn't tell me nothing, right?
Right.
And then you know what happens?
Go on.
Osama bin Laden decides to shoot some airplanes at the Twin Towers, So yeah, this is right in the middle of this process. And I'm from Brooklyn, so I could see it from my roof. It was really it really shut everything down, as you might imagine. So the publishing industry, everything was shut down in New York after 9/11. And I don't know. It kind of changed the whole. My momentum was, because I had the big mo until that moment. I mean, at that time, after I quit my job, I was working as a consultant in Bedford-Stuyvesant. I was beautifying Bedford-Stuyvesant, and also I was giving talks at block associations about how people can avoid, because gentrification was just kind of hitting Bed-Stuy at that point.
Can I ask, what is Bed-Stuy? What's Bedford-Stuyvesant?
Bedford-Stuyvesant is a Black community, well, formerly Black community in Brooklyn.
Okay.
It's very famous. Some very famous people are from there. Lena Horne's from there. A bunch of people.
Mm-hmm.
Biggie Smalls is from Bed-Stuy. So anyway,
my husband had never heard of Biggie Smalls, right?
Really?
Yeah, he's got loads of like CDs and stuff of other artists, but he'd never heard of Biggie Smalls.
Yeah.
So we watched the documentary about 3 weeks ago, and he was really, really interested. And the next day he said to me, I love that documentary about Biggie Smalley.
Biggie Smalley.
I was like, oh my God, you're so sweet. And I was just dumbfounded. How could anybody of our generation have not heard of Biggie Smalls? But anyway, there you go.
Oh, yeah, it was so I grew up in, with gerrymandering, there was a lot of shifting of what neighborhood you in. So originally when I first moved to the neighborhood, it was Bedford-Stuyvesant. Then it became Crown Heights. So I kind of grew up in Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights area, kind of on the border of these two communities. And so anyway, I was at that time I was living in Bedford-Stuyvesant proper, and I was going door to door, kind of because there's a lot of elderly people owning these homes in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and they were being targeted by these predatory lenders and other kind of groups trying to separate them from their property, or kind of getting them to sell the property for cash at a cheap price and below value for cash and stuff like that. And a lot of them were victimized at that time. And now these homes, I mean, some of these homes are worth millions of dollars right now.
Yeah, of course.
These brownstone homes.
So it got super gentrified.
So yeah. So they, at that time, I was trying to help them, to avoid getting cheated out of their homes. And so I had the big mo. I was gonna go into politics. I was just feeling all kinds of great. And then 9/11 occurred and kind of put everything on hold. And I think it was during that time, and I just wrote about this just now, matter of fact. But I remember in my community, there's, here in Japan we have the konbinis, but in America, in New York primarily, they have these corner stores. We call them bodegas.
Yeah. So
the most of the bodegas were either owned by Dominicans or Middle Eastern people, mostly like Yemenis. And my corner bodega was owned by a gentleman from Yemen. He'd been there for 20, 30 years. And, he's like, just part of the community forever, And I remember after 9/11, I walked into his store and I could see something was wrong. He had a look in his face. And I looked down at the counter and I could see his gun was there in the open. I'm like, Muhammad, what's wrong? And he's like, some asshole came in here and called me a terrorist.
Oh, dear.
And he said that people around here are starting to give him a look like he's, Osama bin Laden's best buddy and stuff. And I'm like, I was shocked because it's a Black community. And I never, if honestly, I thought I could see white people doing that, but I could not see Black people doing that. And it shocked the hell out of me. It really did. And I felt sad. I felt angry because he's been making my sandwiches for me since I was a kid. If he a terrorist, we'd be dead. He could have poisoned all of us forever. What I'm saying? What kind of terrorist is cooking for us? He's making ham sandwiches for us. He's Muslim. That's a terrorist. So anyway, it was a shock. That was a shock to my system. And in Bedford-Stuyvesant, after 9/11, you could see suddenly, and I had never seen this in my entire life, red, white, and blue flags protruding from people's homes. I mean, this patriotism I had never, ever seen from a Black community before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. It was disturbing. It was disturbing. So a friend of mine invited me to come hang out with him in Japan for a couple of weeks. And I was like, oh, this would be a great escape for a year or two. let Bush get out of office, maybe, you know, stay over here for a while. That's what I did. That's how I first came to Japan.
Just in 2001?
2004.
Oh, 2004. So you spent a few years after that. That must have been really, that sounds really awful. I'm really sorry you had to go through that. Like not only seeing New York under like coming down, but also seeing that shift in your community as well. It's yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it?
It was.
It's a trick.
Yeah. I mean, it was 2 years, you know, everybody was in trauma. I mean, I understand. It was very traumatic. You know, everybody was really freaked out. I mean, it was like a Godzilla movie. I don't know if you, I was in New York. This is ground zero. I rode my bicycle to Manhattan 2 days after the fact. There's still debris falling from the sky. I mean, it was really like, you know, like the set from some, you know, Die Hard 5, you know, it was really, you just don't recover from that. The debris was 6 stories high. You know what I mean? It's like that. And you just can't believe your eyes.
No.
So yeah, I still got those images in my head, that type of thing. I mean, I kind of crept into Manhattan because Manhattan was kind of closed, but we found a way to get in there. I got there on my bike because I wanted to see this. I'm like,
yeah,
up close. And it's anyway, yeah. So that was 2 years of that before my friend said, "Come over here, hang out with me for a while. You sound like you need a break."
Yeah.
And I went over there, and I came back to New York, and the company that hires people to work in Japan, and they have an office in New York. So I went there and wound up back in Japan, and I've been here ever since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually came here in 2001 and watched that from my TV in Atsugi when I lived up there. Yeah, just before my 30th birthday, and yeah, it wasn't the best celebration, I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Still, so 2004, you come to Japan, and what happens next then, Baye? What Baye? Sorry, I keep saying your name wrong. Baye, Yahweh, Baye, Yahweh. I must implant that into my head. Baye. What happens next? You come over in 2004, like most of us, for a short stay, probably.
Yeah, I came for a short stay, but I know during that first year I met someone, and yeah, she was really, really great. And we had a really, you know, tumultuous relationship, but at the same time, it was really beautiful. And yeah, I fell in love. But then, you know, she got sick and with cancer. She passed away. But yeah, it was pretty horrible. But before she passed away, she knew I was a writer at heart, but I wasn't really writing because I was, you know, over here in Japan, kind of really, really nearly all over the place. But she was like, "You're a writer, right? You know, stop effing around, right? You know." So in dedication to her, I wrote, and that's when I started to blog back in 2008, local in Yokohama, and I just kind of started writing every day, and that led to the first book, which I dedicated to her, and eventually I wrote the second book, and got the column with Japan Times, and momentum, the big Mo.
the Mo, okay.
The Mo.
The momentum, so that's super, super important always. So you're in Yokohama, you've written this book, and so you got your column in the Japan Times, which is called Black Eye, is that right?
Correct.
How long has that been going for now?
I started the column in, I want to say 2015?
2014 or 2015. Okay, so 10 years into being here.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
7 years now. And that's still in play, right?
Yeah. Still in play.
I've been avoiding the news, to be fair.
You're not alone. But
I get the highlights on my phone and then I'm done. Otherwise, it's just like being punched in the face nonstop. Yeah.
But yeah, it's when I was approached by the Japan Times editors, they wanted to get me to do a column, and I was interested in it, of course, but at the same time, you know, I felt like I wanted to make a difference here in Japan, but it's kind of difficult to make a difference when you're writing in English for an English language paper. You're not really reaching the people who need to be reached for the most part. But they informed me that, that Japan Times readership about 25% Japanese. I was like, really? That really surprised me. So I changed my mind and said, okay, and I'm so glad I did, because it gave me a platform, a real like legitimate platform to to address a lot of the issues here. And the other thing was I feel like the unlike America, where I think the biggest problem with race is fear, hate exacerbated by fear. I think in Japan it's not hate, but it's just fear and ignorance mostly. And by addressing the ignorance, you can reduce the fear. It's my theory. So I feel like my column, by focusing on the things about people of African descent that are not common knowledge here in Japan, unfortunately, because their media is very, I don't know.
White foreigner oriented.
You're right. So I want to let them know about some of the things. I think they have a lot of questions. What are Black people doing here? Because they see the story about, some guys raped some Japanese girl in Okinawa, or so some African guy killed a Japanese taxi driver. These types of stories are, bam, bam, but the positive stories are not,
Yeah.
Hitting them upside their head. So I said, I want to hit them upside the head with some positive stories. And so I focus on, for example, like a university professor from Mali, or a lawyer from Jamaica, or these types of people who are here and doing incredible things, and that they just aren't talked about enough. So I try to put their names and put their images and put their accomplishments on blast, and it was successful. It was successful. Nobody was really doing anything like that.
No.
Now there's a lot of people doing it, and I feel so great that I don't feel like it's only me now. They got like these YouTube channels that focus on the Black experience in Japan, and they got all this stuff. So there's a lot of people doing it now. So I feel like, okay, I can step back and focus on other things. I finally, encouraged or inspired enough people to do the same thing. Because back when I started it, everybody was feeling like they were taking it for granted that, oh, well, I'm like, no, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to shove Blackness in their face. And I think most people feel uncomfortable doing that. They feel like, I don't know. I feel people feel, huh?
Hedging a little bit, or no?
Because I think that, for example, most white people don't have to do that. They don't have to shove whiteness, because it's just like a status quo.
Uh-huh.
But we have to do extra. We have to be extra, and people don't want to be extra. They want to just go, let's let things happen organically, naturally. No, you can't, because organically, naturally, it won't happen. They're going to default to somebody else, some other group, some other voices. They're going to be the default. You are never going to be the default. You have to kick in the door, like Biggie Smalls says, kick in the door, waving the 4-4. That's what he meant. It wasn't just about violence. It was about, this is how you make things happen. You gotta kick in the door, waving the 4-4. And basically that's how I built a career here in Japan. Kicking in the door, waving the 4-4. Bed-Stuy. Spread love is the Brooklyn way. That's exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I had people like my mother and Biggie Smalls as inspirations
100%.
for the things I wanted to accomplish here.
Love that. And it all, to me, it all comes back to that school and your mum's insight and just that kind of the way that you can have this presence. And now you are the daddy of the, the Black experience in Japan. And so well, I don't know how to describe it, but I just like reading what you have to read anyway. Like I enjoy, I mean, you're a writer, but I like, you know, you can pick and choose, but I enjoy reading what you write anyway. So bravo. And also we white people, we need to read it too. Anybody who's reading the Japan Times need to read it too. You know, it's great that you're reaching Japanese people too, but all the people who read the Japan Times need to see that, frankly. I don't need to shout that.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I mean,
oh, I do. I make myself laugh. I'm like, why am I preaching this to the choir?
I'm the choir here. Yeah, I agree.
You're
totally.
not the choir. You're the choir, the pastor, and the bloody pope. So anyway, so let's bring us up to speed now. So when you were talking there about like really highlighting the Black experience in Japan and so on, that there's two people who spring to mind here, and I'm so glad that they're women as well, is the woman who was, is it Miss Universe or Miss Japan?
Well, it depends which one you're talking about. Because they both were Black at one point.
The first one.
That was Miss Universe Japan, Ariana Miyamoto.
Yes, her, and also the one, the woman now.
She's also Miss Universe Japan.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
So you've been kind of interviewing them and promoting them and something. Can you tell us a bit more about that? And then we'll come on to the Naomi Osaka conversation. She's amazing, but still.
Yeah, she is amazing.
She's
Ariana Miyamoto. I met her a few times. She's great. Mm-hmm. She's great. And when she won the Miss Universe Japan contest, beauty contest, it was unprecedented, obviously. And there was a lot of criticism about her being not Japanese enough, and you know, how can a Black woman represent Japan, this kind of thing.
Where was this coming from, Baye?
Baye.
Oh shit, the bed. I'm gonna say Baye. Oh God, I'm so ashamed. I'm so sorry. Please.
It happens.
Honestly, Baye.
What was the question?
I've got it written here on a piece of paper. Baye, Yahweh. I'm gonna stick a post-it note on the screen now. Where was that coming from, that criticism? Not that it makes any difference.
It was on social, you know, social media, Twitter and Nichan, you know, the usual suspects. So, but she rolled with it. She was great. I mean, and when I first interviewed her, the first time I interviewed her, she was telling me about how it was growing up, because she grew up in Nagasaki area over there. And, you know, there was a lot of bullying she had to deal with growing up. And she told me that there was a friend of hers, another biracial youth. He was half white. Mm-hmm. And he couldn't handle a lot of the bullying and the treatment that they were getting, and he committed suicide. So that was her impetus for trying to find a platform to talk about these things and to make sure that, you know, this type of thing doesn't continue to happen to untraditional Japanese people, you know, like herself. And when the opportunity came to be part of the Miss Universe Japan thing, that she decided that would be her platform, because she had the look, she had the talent, she had the, you know, the equipment to be competitive in that arena, and clearly she was, because she won. Yeah. So yeah, when she told me that, I was like, wow. And initially that's what she was doing, but there was a backlash, you know, because And I realized that was the case before it got ugly. But I said, she's if she doesn't win the global contest, because she won the Japan, the national contest, but now she has to go up against Miss Universes from all over the world, right? And if she doesn't win that, then she has to come back here. Now, if she comes back here after all the things she's been saying, politicizing this whole her win as much as she has, how is Japan going to receive her? And it hasn't been good, you know, and that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate because it's going to. I felt like it was going to have an impact on future winners. They're going to be more reserved, like, oh, I better be careful what I say about Japan because, you know, if I don't win the main contest and have a chance to go all over the world and be the face of Miss Universe, if I don't have that opportunity, I'm going to have to come back here and be a talent or work in a fashion magazine, stuff like that. And if they don't open those doors for me because they're afraid I might be too political or whatever, you know, so they kind of terrorize people who gain a platform here so that they don't speak up. And that's, you know, so and here I am trying to encourage them to speak up, but then I feel kind of torn because I don't want to put them in a position where they can't have a good life here in Japan because they are too outspoken. I can do that because I'm a gaijin, whatever, but they are Japanese. They have to live here fully immersed in in Japaneseness, and they can't if, you know.
Yeah, I hear you, Baye. I often have this quandary myself because I'm always, you know, encouraging people to take bold moves and do this and do that, but there's always some collateral to that. And I think, yeah, for people like you and I who maybe are in positions of leadership, I'm going to say that we have to be very, very mindful of the collateral that might come with that. I just want to also, for people who are listening outside Japan, to let them know that gaijin means foreigner here, but it's a slight. It's like saying Johnny Foreigner or something,
Right.
kind of, but shorter. But Baye and I think it would be fair enough to say, I think it would be fair enough to say that Baye and I both have a lot of respect and love for Japan. Am I wrong? Do you have a lot of
You're
love and
correct.
respect for Jan? Yeah, but we also understand what it is. So we're having quite a high context conversation here. So I just need us to kind of get on the same page for people who may not have the same context. So when Baye is saying that those people have to come back and get into the Japaneseness, I know exactly what he means, but it's very, very, everything is very, very interwoven, and every little action has a consequence or has collateral, and it's a beautiful thing in one respect because it means that my Shinkansen is never late. That's what I always kind of remind myself. It also means that he and I get to play outside the field, and if we're very clever, we know exactly how to play inside the rules too. But we have to be extremely mindful of the impact that our calls to action might have on people who are inside the uchi, inside the Japanese society. Something like that, Baye. Would that be a fair?
That was extremely fair and well said.
Thank you.
Except in my mind, and when I first met her, I kind of felt like because she is biracial, she's not really inside. You know what I mean? Okay. She's always, the reason she was subject to the bullying, the ijime that she had to deal with her entire youth is because she's not inside. But at the same time, I don't know. They're the consummate inside outsider, you know, because they are fully fluent in the language, they're fully fluent in the culture, they know everything is going on around them, but you know, at the same time, they're able to. If you're clever, you can navigate around and work and work out and work things in a way that are that will benefit you. And I don't know, it's difficult to explain, but yes.
Yeah, and it's maybe not our explanation to make in that way. I think we've maybe done as far as we can go on that
Yeah.
one. My gorgeous friend and collaborator, Nina Cataldo.
Ooh, she's nice too. I like Nina.
Yeah, she's absolutely brilliant. So I've interviewed her twice, and she has a group called Hafu Ladies, because people, and Hafu, by the way, is not a slight word in it means that you are half Japanese and half something else. And she chooses that word. She also has that background. And she has a whole organization that she's organized herself for Hafu Ladies, because the experience is so very unique. And each unique experience is unique as well. But that's a different experience to either mine or Baye's or anybody else, or somebody who's Japanese. Both parents are Japanese. So it's just there's so many layers to this stuff, isn't there, Baye?
It is layered.
So
it's
many
extremely layered.
layers.
You know.
And it's fascinating. So let's move on. I think we should start to land this conversation now. We're almost up to speed, and I mean, I could go all night, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
Talking of people who are politically active, I would love to just talk about your work around Naomi Osaka. She is somebody who I consider a mentor now, because she's got a similar kind of atmosphere to you, in her kind of just not brash, how can I say, her straightforwardness in what she's doing and thinking and feeling. I love her. It's a masterclass in authenticity as far as I'm concerned. Oh, and PS, and skill, because to be an elite athlete at that level is another level of commitment. So but she was misrepresented in Japan in a way that is quite mind-boggling when you look on Baye's website at that part of his work and activism. Do you just want to speak to that a little bit before we start to land, Baye?
Bye.
Gosh, I can't repeat myself. Look, Baye, look.
It's on the screen. Oh my God.
And that's for my listeners as well. I am like,
you get a blind spot.
No, mate. Just I don't know whether I should even make this joke, but just call me Karen.
So
okay.
Naomi Osaka. Let me see. I don't know. I mean, I guess the first time I came into to interacting with her, or with her, I don't know.
No.
Anyway, it was when Nishin. So Nishin decided to do an advertisement featuring her, but in the advertisement, they made her skin several shades lighter. They changed her hair to some kind of stringy brunette looking thing, and it was not a good look. It was not a good look for Nishin. It was not a good look for Naomi. It was not a good look for Japan. And I wrote a column about it. I did some tweets, and I kind of pushed back against it, and they apologized. Nishin apologized for the issue. They kind of blamed it. They kind of made it into a communication issue between the Japanese wing of the advertiser and the American wing of the advertiser weren't communicating correctly. So because Naomi said she didn't know until it was out, that they were going to do it. So she never approved this particular artwork. But anyway, I think what was most damaging about that is that there are, like we discussed earlier, there's many biracial children here who look up to Naomi, and they finally have a hero, and then they see their hero portrayed in anime as this, this little white girl, and it kind of sends the message that they're not good enough. It's kind of like what I was saying about my youth in America. The entire public school system sends a message to kids of African descent that you're not good enough. You're not good enough to be a historical figure. You're not good enough to be in league with the greats of history. Your people are a side note of freaking, and that's pretty much the message that this kind of anime says to these children who were looking for this, for someone who, who's a brown skinned hero, they turned her into a brunette, and it was just disheartening for many of these people. I spoke with a lot of the parents who were, they were disgusted by what Nishin did. So anyway, and Naomi at that time, she was not politicized yet. She was kind of, I'm here to play tennis. I don't know what y'all talking about. I am in Australia to play tennis to win the Open. So, and I really appreciate that because I didn't want to distract her with this thing, but at the same time, this was going on. This is a real thing, and it couldn't be ignored because, and a lot of people was like, oh, why are you worried about that? Just, focus on the tennis. I'm like, no. This is real. This is having an impact on people. So it needs to be discussed. And the great thing about how it was received, this particular complaint, was a lot of Japanese people recognized it was problematic as well. Because I did a story for Toyo Keizai about this, a Japanese publication. And I was looking at some of the responses on Yahoo Japan and on Toyo Keizai, and even Japanese people were like, why did Nishin do this? Why did they make her lighter? I don't understand. Is it difficult to draw black skin? What is the problem with that? So it wasn't just foreigners complaining. So Nishin realized that they made a big problem because maybe they were thinking, and this is also part of the problem, it's something that I talk about quite often when I meet with these companies, is that you have to realize that all of your products, all your advertising, all your efforts are going to be viewed globally by a global audience. So there's no longer, even if you made this commercial, especially for the Japanese market, that doesn't mean only the Japanese market is going to be watching this commercial, because definitely this ad was made for Japanese consumers. It was not made for Western consumers. You would not see this commercial in America, but it's on the internet. It's on YouTube, so it's global, and everybody's going to be taking a look at it. So I think they realize that now, and now that they see that that's that's the situation. Now they start to proceed accordingly and start to take into consideration that everybody's going to be viewing their products and their commercials. So anyway, that was the key thing that came out of this, I think, and not just for Nishin, but other companies saw this and they adjusted accordingly as well.
Yeah.
Same thing happened with the media, when with blackface thing. When they saw what happened, the response to Hamada-san wearing blackface for that, his monomane of Eddie Murphy, when they saw the response to that, there has not been another instance of blackface in Japanese media since then. So blackface is essentially ceased in Japan because of that response to that particular instance of blackface. So that's great that people are, and of course, as I said at that time, blackface is not the problem. Blackface is not necessarily racist. Blackface is a symptom of the problem, the real problem, with Japanese media. So just because you eliminate blackface doesn't mean that the problem is resolved. But I think they're proceeding in that manner, like, okay, we've gotten rid of blackface. Now these people can shut up. No. We're not done, because after blackface came whitewashing. The next thing they did was Naomi Osaka. That was after the blackface. So that's another symptom of the problem. So the problem is still there, and it results, this problem, this disease, manifests itself in blackface, in whitewashing, in that ridiculous NHK freaking anime to explain Black Lives Matters with you remember that really racist anime they did? So it's going to have these types of results, this disease that's still alive and kicking in Japanese media. And it's what I've made my objective to try to rectify. So I'm not sure what to call it. I don't like to call it the racism, because it's not simply racism. It's not simply ignorance. It's not so easy to peg. what the issue is, but
well, there's a couple of things in here that I just from a systems coaching perspective, whenever you remove one thing from a system, something else surfaces. So it's constantly
right.
kind of revealing itself. We say the system will reveal itself. And what you were saying about like removing blackface and your part in that. As a coach, we always start with behavior because behavior is really easy to kind of modify, and then we go down into the values and belief systems.
Right.
What came up for me here, Baye, is with the whitewashing of Naomi Osaka is that there's something especially sinister to me about making a dark-skinned woman light-skinned to be more palatable to Japan. Especially sinister. That's what came up for me.
Sinister, is that the right word? But
That's the word that
I mean, I think that lighter is more marketable here.
Yeah.
Is that sinister?
I'd say so.
Okay, then it's sinister.
But I'm a drama queen, and I'll take that. That's what that's what surfaced for me as we were talking, as you were just talking to me. Then I've not put that word on it before, but as you were saying it, it's like that's to make it more palatable or to make it more marketable, that you actually make this woman not her anymore. There's something sinister about that to me, anyway. Please tell me where I'm wrong.
No, I didn't say you were wrong.
And I don't.
I'm just trying to. It's, you know, my favorite word is problematic. Oh. That's my word.
Hashtag.
So sinister is a little darker, is a lot darker than problematic. I like to use problematic because it's kind of a flat word. It's like, yeah, there's a problem there and we're going to address it, as opposed to that's racist. You know, so sinister is closer to racist than problematic is.
Well, I'll take you problematic and I'll raise you sinister. I'm not.
You know, and it's kind of like what I was telling you earlier about the balance. So I'm able to keep my balance if I avoid labeling things racism easily. Yeah. Because I try to use that word sparingly. Yeah. You know. It's particularly here in Japan because it's not received well. No, they don't have a good relationship with this word. You know, the sabetsu it covers too much of discrimination, racism, prejudice, bigotry, but it covers too much. So I try to avoid these types of words because they're too strong and people can't digest it properly, you know. So problematic works. For me, sinister is even a little too strong, I think.
I'll hold sinister, and we'll go wild with the hashtag.
You're gonna stick to sinister?
No, because sinister. I am, because there's something really that says that. Here's why it's sinister, because it signals to me that I have more value than Naomi Osaka.
No, yes, that is the underlining message. But I'm capable of spinning. Not spinning is the wrong word. So, for example, this was my take. I'm gonna tell you exactly how I read that. I read that as Japanese consumers are accustomed to a certain type of advertising. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't include Black people, of course. So how do we use Naomi Osaka in our advertising if her Blackness is going to make our consumer base uncomfortable? We make her lighter. That's how I read it. We make her lighter and whiter because that's more palatable, that's more acceptable to our customer base. Is that sinister? If you read it that way.
I'm deeply uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable is good. Uncomfortable is good. I can work with uncomfortable.
Okay. I'll land it here. This is how I feel about it. Chotto.
It's just, yeah. Chotto. Doesn't problematic capture that?
Okay.
Sinister is not chotto.
Okay. No,
when I hear Zurui is kind of sinister, kind of sneaky, kind of underhanded, kind of.
No, I don't think the intention's there, but I think the impact has an edge.
The impact is sinister, yes.
Okay. Right.
And the reason I came at them so strongly is because of the impact.
Yeah.
But not necessarily because I thought they were on some.
No, I don't think so. I
right.
don't think
the intention was not sinister. The result.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, got it. Unless it was.
Unless it was, right.
That's another.
Well, you know what? Friends of mine have come to me about the advertiser. We're not going to say their name, but it's a big one. That these are some super racist. A friend of mine told me that they're extremely racist people. So, but I don't know that for a fact.
No.
He's a person who works for them directly.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Right. So, yeah. But I don't know that for a fact. So, it remains alleged. And until I see, myself personally see evidence of that, I'm gonna take it with a grain of salt. But
anyway, good job on your part.
Thank you.
In doing that. And again, now I get it. Like, because I was like, whoa, he took on that. Now I understand where that comes from. It's from the self-esteem. I think that's my. So I'm going to be calling my therapist quite soon after this, so I can boost mine. So and do better work in the world. So this kind of brings us up to speed. So I don't want to take too much of your time up here, but I just want to mark the shit show that was the last year and the 4 years prior to that. Now, we've already covered that there were 400 prior years to that as well, which were also a shit show. But right. I'm just interested to know, I mean, I'm saying that in a comedy way, but, so, but like, yeah, so there was the 4 years of that presidency, which was really intense. And like, I didn't even realize until like, I was like, why do I feel more relaxed this week? It doesn't have that much impact on me. Well, it does, but anyway, but yeah, this last year, in a nutshell, because I do want to let you go and have your dinner.
What's the question?
How's this last year been for you? I mean, you really did take on the mantle of the kind of the spokesperson for Black Lives Matter over here in Japan. So I just wondered how this last year has been for you, Baye, because I know it's been a really intense year for you.
It has ups and downs, but it ultimately was fabulous. I feel like we made significant strides. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of organizations now in Japan where there weren't before. There's a Black Lives Matter Tokyo, Black Lives Matter Osaka, Kyoto, Hiroshima. They're based around Japan, and they're active. They're still doing things to this day. Having various events. There's other organizations that are being more progressive, more proactive about addressing different issues here. I used to really feel fairly alone out there. Mm-hmm. Now I don't. I feel like there's an army. There's an army of people out there who we're not all exactly on the same page, but we all kind of headed in a similar direction or in the same direction, and that's enough. I feel like some people are kind of mercenaries. They're just kind of not mercenaries, but what we call them, culture vultures. They're just trying to get paid off the thing. But unintentionally, they're doing some goodness too. They're doing some good too. So. It's just a lot of energy out there that's going in the right direction. I'm very happy about that. Last year, and not just besides the energy I'm getting from the people, which has been the most that has filled me with the most promise and hope for the future, but also the media here. I want to talk briefly about NHK, because I talked about that really racist segment program they did last year. But after I went there and did a presentation and told them how they could do things better, the type of things they need to change in order to rectify the damage they've done and to prevent further damage and to improve things moving forward, how they can diversify and increase representation and talk about things that they just haven't been talking about heretofore. They've been doing it. They've been following my recommendations, creating new program that, that's more diverse and more representative of, biracial Japanese people and people of African descent and people of Indian descent and, that are here, that are living here and being productive. They're doing more, and not just on NHK World, but, on the Japanese program, which is the most important one, the main program, the main station. They did a special on the ijime that biracial people experience here. I was shocked. I almost shocked to tears. I was like, I couldn't believe this is just unprecedented stuff, so I'm going to be watching because I'm kind of a media watchdog and make sure they continue to do these types of things. And when I feel them slipping, I'm going to, give them a little shove. But so far, so good. I mean, I really think they need to hire more people, have some biracial people or even non-Japanese, non-traditional Japanese people on staff, and get some consultants to kind of police some of the programming that they've have questions about, because they're still putting out some questionable messages. I'm watching a program. They did a segment on Jaspora. I forgot the name of it. They're gonna be mad. I'm so sorry. But the name of the organization it's a uniting Africans and Japanese, and they did a special on that. And the first thing the reporter says, this is on NHK. The first thing the reporter says is, they talk about how homogenous Japan is. I just hate when they begin any news segment with, it's like, whatever happens after this, just remember that Japan is 99.9% Japanese. I'm like, this is not accurate stuff. And they keep reinforcing this fallacy, and it's problematic. It's problematic. It's sinister, goddammit. It's problematic, and they need to stop doing that. But anyway, little by little, Squishy Cincinnati, we'll get there. We'll get there.
And with you at the helm, I'm sure that it is going to happen. Now, I know you're really into the big boys. Really, that's your area of focus, but for us smaller people, how can we not be mercenaries and culture vultures?
Follow your heart. I don't know. I can't.
Good. All right, follow your heart.
Follow your heart. If you find yourself following your pocket, you're probably a culture vulture. Follow your heart. do the right thing, like Spike Lee says. Do the right thing. If the right thing just happens to put money in your pocket, okay. But if you really, I'm serious. It's
I love it.
I don't want to oversimplify it, but
no, but that's really beautiful. And and again, there can be collateral from that as well, because whenever we're out in the world, like you and I are doing things, there's always going to be somebody pointing the finger and telling us we're doing something problematic or mercenary or sinister. But, and that's just one of the things I think that comes from following our hearts. And I'm really glad that I've followed my heart to you today, Baye. My assistant and I have been talking about getting you onto my podcast for well over a year now. Wow. And I kept putting it off. Of course, we wanted you in May because it rhymes, Baye in May. And also I used to video them, but of course with COVID having come along, so the first interviews that I did were all videoed, and then when COVID came along, we stopped videoing, and I had this list of people that I wanted to save for video, and you were one of them. But now I've decided I don't want to do the videoing anymore because this is more fun and easier for everybody. So I'm just so thrilled that you decided to come on. You really, truly are a hero of mine. I'm not just saying that to blow smoke up your ass. I don't even know what that means. Who's ever blown smoke up anybody's ass? That's weird. I did see a film once, but so I don't, I really appreciate the work that you do here, and I really appreciate the education that you do and everything that you bring to the fore. And today I get to kind of understand a lot of those kind of like, wow, he's so brave moments. It's like, no, you've just got self-esteem. Comes from being surrounded by people who tell you the truth and give you
a history that belongs to you. So I'm really, really delighted to have had you here, Baye. So do you have any wise words to depart with besides follow your heart?
Well, I'm gonna
Get me a tattoo that says Baye.
I'll end this with some wise words from a gentleman from Liverpool.
Shut up. Go on.
He has so many. God, I'm talking about Lennon, of course.
Oh, is it I am the walrus?
He has so many wise words. I mean, I don't even know where to start.
But he belongs to New York, really, actually.
Yeah, he kind
And he
of.
used to say that New York reminded him of Liverpool. I've got a brilliant photograph of me and my husband dressed up as John and Yoko. I'm John and he's anyway.
I would love to see that.
I'll send it to you maybe.
No, actually, I just think that as the people always ask me, they ask me questions like, you know, how do you stay, how do you keep from getting depressed?
Yeah.
You know, about the state of affairs of things, and you know, how do you remain hopeful for the future? And you know, and my answer to that question kind of varies. It depends on, you know, what period, what point in my life that you caught me. And right now, I would answer that question by saying, make sure that you fill the remainder of your life with things that make you happy. You know, because life is going to continue to give you challenges that are going to, you know, tamper with your happiness, tamper with your joy. But I got this new house and it brings me so much joy. You know, I got a new wife and she brings me so much joy, and it keeps me balanced. Balance is the key. You know, so when I go out there and I'm running into all this ugliness, I got all this beauty that I come home to that just kind of brings me back to zero, you know, and that's how I do it. It's not even a mystery. It's not even a trick. It's just, you know, I try to make it. I try to keep as many positive things in my life as the negative stuff I'm going to run into inevitably.
Yeah.
Because that's, you know, and everybody's running into it inevitably. So just make sure you got enough positive out there to keep it balanced.
Thank you, Baye. That was just brilliant. Shout out to Mama.
Hi, Mom. Love you. I'll send her a link to this.
Thank you for letting us in on this little snapshot. So, you know, there are many, many ways to lead a life, and this is one of them. And everybody has stories, and it's my great, great pleasure to tell them. Thank you for listening today. Baye, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can go to Baye McNeil on Twitter, or BayeMcNeil.com. It's my website. Baye McNeil on Instagram. I'm Baye McNeil pretty much everywhere. If you put Baye McNeil in Google, you're gonna come up with everything.
Yeah, you're gonna get it.
I'm out there. I bare my soul.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today. Okay. Goodbye, everybody.